So, where do action learning groups, or ALGs, come from?
So action learning groups were a concept came up with a guy called Reg Revens, who was a business guru and Olympian in the 1930s. And the concept is around bringing people together from different backgrounds with different personalities to enable a more open learning experience, and so something that everybody can take from. And the concept is something that we want to really bring to life and use it as a complete culture change.
I think Revens was also fixated with the idea of the role of a non-expert. He liked action learning groups to contain people who had lots of experience, people with minimal experience, and also people who had a lot of expertise in the area that the action learning group was covering, but crucially people who didn't have the expertise. And the basis of that was that they would ask the more searching and difficult questions, sometimes challenging the culture that was already prevalent within a workplace. He used it when he was reorganising the privatised mines in Britain into the National Coal Board in 1947, found that it worked really well in bringing that organisation together, and then refined it over the years, and it became, as has been said, a guru, which a lot of people look to, especially in the United States.
The models evolved so much so that it can be used in any scenario. As Paul touched on, the role of the non-expert is potentially that person who comes out with that golden gem of information, almost like the little boy in the story of the Emperor's New Clothes. He's the one who has not much idea, but actually gives the most telling point, and enables everybody else in that scenario to have a light bulb moment.
And I think absolutely the light bulb moment. I think people learn not only after from the outputs of the group, but they also learn in the group about themselves and potentially about each other, which is just as important almost as the outputs from the group.
What will I get from an action learning group?
So Pete, I think probably the most crucial thing that you'll get out of this is honesty from your team. And it'll be interesting for you because normally you would be leading these sessions. With an action learning group, it's not so much you leading the sessions as the team leading the session themselves. And I think they will be much more able to put forward subjects and ideas that the group can deal with, and sort of self-coaching within that. I think you will find something out about the individuals which maybe you may not have known before, because they will feel liberated and enabled in terms of taking part in the group. Matt, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think for me, what we're used to is very much the person at the front telling everybody else what to do, whilst everybody else nods along. Whereas in this environment, as Paul's alluded to, your people will coach each other. It's taking you out of the equation, and you might find that different voice telling them and giving them experiences makes it a lot more powerful.
Okay, that sounds really good. What will my team get out of this?
You'll find is that your team will get actions and outputs to take away from the session. What they'll be used to is, as I mentioned before, is you telling them what to do. They'll nod along and they'll take it for a little bit and they'll do it, and then it'll fall off. With this, they feel empowered, they get a voice, they get an opinion that they can take away. They get different experiences from the group, so they'll learn things about each other that they might not necessarily have known before. Paul, thoughts?
Yeah, there's a level of ownership of what they've done as well, which is there, which may not have been there before when it's been a led session. And also everyone, including the people whose personality preferences maybe are not to be quite as confident as other people's, and maybe want to think about things a little bit more and not so much about feelings, their input is just as important as the people who regularly contribute towards sessions, and the session enables them to get involved and feel that it's valued as well.
What overlays all of that is you and your team will get almost a unity, because you've all come up with these actions and outputs together. You've all had a say in it.
Okay, what are the mechanics of setting up
So I think mechanics-wise, by far the most important thing initially is the invite. I think we need to get the information about what the subject is for the action learning group across, and what we're expecting them to bring with them. A lot of the time we need to make sure that they understand that part of being in the group is bringing ideas along and not just assuming that other people will do it, and having things to discuss in that sense. So yeah, for me, it's mechanics-wise, first thing is the invite.
Your people is important, so we'd say no more than 6, maximum 7 people to form an action learning group. You being the facilitator of the group, and then a group of no more than 6 or 7 people to thrash out the subjects that they bring along with them.
What about the room that we're going to use?
Yeah, absolutely. The room is really vitally important. I think the first thing is to make sure that you've got the right number of chairs in a circle with nothing in between for all of the people who are coming. And if someone doesn't turn up for any reason, take the chair out and reduce the number of seats to the number of people you've got there. You also need to have a flip chart in the room as part of the circle of chairs. That's really important. Matt, anything you want to add on that?
I think you've covered the main things. That flip chart is vitally important, and having that room set up prior to these people arriving in the room, rather than setting it up once they get in there, so they're walking into a working, learning environment.
I think Matt's absolutely right with that. I think if there are chairs, if you can get identical chairs for everyone, it's a very sort of non-hierarchical feel. So you don't want someone in a particularly important chair within the room. It might sound like a minor thing, but the idea that everyone is equal in that situation is crucially important. The other thing is, I think, if it's drinks and getting people feeling comfortable, then do it. I think things like bringing in sandwiches, food and bits of crisp packet to rustle and things like that is probably to be discouraged. The idea is exactly as Matt has put it, this is a working atmosphere, very similar to when being on the phone or whatever the jobs that the people in the room do normally. This is just another bit of their working time, really.
What sorts of things might actually go wrong in an ALG?
Some of the things that might go wrong can be driven by you as the facilitator, in the planning stages, in the room setup, and in the way that you want to take control of that session. But remember, it's not your session, it's a session for everybody else, and everyone's going to be learning from each other. One of the potential things that could go wrong is that big bomb being dropped in the room of, I feel like I'm not getting anything, and your immediate reaction is to go into tell mode and go into, well, this is what you are getting from it, trust the group. Leave it to the rest of the people, don't you think, Paul?
I agree, and I think that it's also around the contracting that's done. I think sometimes we all have a tendency to want to bypass things like that in terms of time, and maybe think, well, everybody knows each other here, we don't need to have a contract, we don't really need to talk about how what behaviours we're going to have in the room and the way we're going to ask things. That's potentially a source of mistakes and errors if a bombshell is delivered into the session from someone, and it could be many different types of contribution. People's reaction to that is really down to the group rather than it being something that you need to take control of. And if the contracting isn't right at the beginning, you would need to intervene, which would sort of be completely the wrong thing to do in an action learning group.
One of the sessions that I've run recently was driven so well by the contract that we put together as a team. I ran it with my team, so it would have been so easy to not contract. Actually, it turned out to be the most effective contract I've ever seen, and really set the tone for the session, and found that people were referring back to that contract throughout the day, which helped it run so effectively.
It was self-policing. In the end, people were holding themselves to the contract and realising sometimes they'd maybe gone too far, and apologies were given. And there were some issues, which I've been in teams for a long time, there were some issues there that had run really deep between team members, which were able to be aired and sorted out actually in a group situation, which gave it real power, and you could feel some of those issues that had maybe been hanging over people for a long time dissipating actually within the session. So although we're saying it's something that could go wrong in terms of the contract, if you get the contract right and you're consistent with having a contract, that can probably be one of the most powerful takeaways that you.
So we're talking here about a group scenario, so what's my role within that group?
Your role, in a sense, is crucial in that you're bringing everyone together, you're planning the session, you're looking at what the subjects might be for the initial discussion. Once that session starts, you're just one part of the group. Once the contract's been made and everyone knows how the behaviours are expected to be, and you've got people sat in the circle, then you're just 1/6, 1/7, 1/8, depending on how many people there are of the group. and the group will make the decisions in that space, then that's really, really important. So it won't happen without you in a sense, but once it's started, you're just a part of that group, and the process of what happens after that is down to the group.
Your role changes. So very much you'll be used to playing the role of the teacher, the teller, and you'll stand up in front of your team and you'll deliver them a briefing or a change piece, and you'll be the most important person in that room, where that learning can't happen without you. Now your role changes to an important role, but they're not the most important role. You're the one that can move the session in a different direction with your questioning. You're the person that makes sure that everybody's had their equal say, and that nobody's being missed out and that nobody feels undervalued. You're also the person that sums up the action at the end of the session, takes the flip chart paper away, keeps it safe so that when you do your follow-up action learning group, that's brought back to life.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more, and I think in terms of your role, you're actually going to be making sure that everyone's had their say, and that's a powerful position to be in, because if you can get to the point where everyone has had their say, whatever the outputs are, everyone's agreement, they're the outputs of the group. And if you've contracted correctly at the beginning, then people can take that away and know that that is right and that everyone else is on board with it, which is powerful stuff and a real sort of culture shift in some ways to what we've done before.
All of those parts that we've talked about today of an action learning group make up an ideal learning environment for people to learn new things, to share experiences, to bring a team together, and it's super important that you see the benefits that you're going to get from this, but ultimately you won't know those benefits until you've tried it.